My first memory I'd had my entire life of being moved from somewhere to somewhere else. Was it just a recurring dream, or was this a real memory? I simply didn't know. I remember being in a car with another child next to me. Didn't know who this child was. Didn't know where I was being taken from, and never had anybody to tell me that that was the day I was taken from my mother.
I always wondered what happened to my parents. I always wondered, who am I? My biological parent reported that she was the victim of a rape. So I entered foster care about 2 years old. I don't think enough people understand how traumatic it can be. People see you as being put in a better situation because foster care is supposed to be better than whatever it was that you were going through.
At 14, I came out as gay to my parents. And so things started to kind of get really messy at home. And, my parents were not happy with me. And so as a result of that, I ended up in foster care.
My mother was mentally ill, so she self-medicated through drugs and alcohol. And she was a woman who clearly couldn't take care of herself, let alone her 5 kids. We lived behind supermarkets, out of cars, on the streets, and in homeless shelters. So we were these little kids who had to steal food to eat.
There was sort of a culture, like, oh, well, we're foster kids, so we don't get to say anything. We should just be lucky enough that we're here and we have a place to be. And that wasn't the case, and it isn't the case.
More than anything else, the thing that sustained me was a vision of a different life. Though I was told I was worthless, given up on, ugly, something about me wasn't quite right, broken. It was always competing with the other things that I had already developed, my sense of purpose and place already. My vision was always going to win out.
To me, education was an equalizer. It was something that I had the ability to control myself.
As a foster child, my caseworker told me at the time that you can't go to college because foster kids don't go to college. And I didn't listen to her. I actually was listening to my high school educators who were telling me that the only pathway out of poverty was to get an education.
I was always thinking about, what's the next thing I gotta do? What's the next thing I have to accomplish? Celebrate your small victories.
When you put yourself in an environment where you know that you can rise in it and you can manage it and you can do well in it, that encourages you to figure out what your next challenge is gonna be.
A young person who doesn't have the strength, doesn't have the skills, the knowledge to sort of get out there and get involved, that's exactly what New Yorkers for Children does.
Kids in foster care don't have individuals that they could look to say, hey, I was in foster care, but I went to college and this is an achievable goal.
You've got to push through it. And the only way that you can possibly push through it is if you have others around you for that moment in time that they're before you, that they're actually encouraging you.
As a result of doing that kind of work, I realized that I really wanted to be a social worker. I realized that that's where my gifts were. I should be helping other people.
There's a pathway there and there are resources there, and take your time, but eventually you're gonna get to where you're gonna be.
I meet a lot of young people, and I can tell you, extraordinary strength and resilience, the likes of which I've never seen. And over time, it all does pan out. It does. It finds its way. Our responsibility, those of us who have aged out of the foster care system and charted new paths, is to say, see, I'm not special. See, you can do this. Because I did it. Because I did, you can. In fact, there's not even a question of if you can. The only question is how. That's where New Yorkers for Children is so important, because New Yorkers for Children is the how.
If I could speak to a young Kathleen, I would probably tell her that she is enough.
Speaking to myself, I guess, at 14, I would really say, believe in yourself.
Never be afraid to ask for help. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength.
For those of you in the system or aging out of the system, we're not measured by what we inherit, because you had no say over that. You've done nothing wrong. But you have every say over what you can create. And because of your experiences, both those that are adverse and those that are positive, arm you with everything that you need to write those new beginnings. We believe in you.